Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. School choice is the subject that elicits strong opinions whenever it's discussed. Tonight, I'm joined by someone who's having a great success with a voucher program in Wisconsin. The president of the St. Anthony School in Wisconsin, Zeus Rodriguez, is here. As always, I want you to be part of the program. You can tweet me at Raymond Arroyo or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. Now here's the brief. News from the world over this week.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to the World Over Live. Do voucher programs offer children a better education than they can receive in their local public school? My next guest runs one of the most successful school choice programs in the nation. But there are criticisms of voucher programs and many questions. I raised some of them with Zeus Rodriguez. He's the president of the St. Anthony School in Milwaukee. I spoke to Mr. Rodriguez here in our D.C. studio. Take a look. Now, Zeus, you are the president of what is the largest Catholic school system, really. Certainly, I think it's probably the biggest in the nation, yes? With 4 separate campuses?
Yes, actually we have 5 campuses.
Wow.
We are considered the largest K-12 Catholic school in the United States, as well as the largest voucher school in the United States as well.
What distinguishes the school, and what has this voucher program, in your mind, offered to students that they couldn't get elsewhere?
The voucher program, which was started in Milwaukee, the first in the nation 23 years ago, really allowed parents to have a choice of where they really wanted to send their kids. You hear an argument many times about how Catholic schools don't have much to offer. They're closing everywhere. We can't give public funds to these schools because we're just saving them. You're not saving them. Basically, you're just showing what value that they have if you take away the obstacle of the finances. And they're basically just flocking to our school. St. Anthony's, it's been around 140 years. This year, 3 years ago, we started a high school, and we have our first graduating class this year. And you know, really what distinguishes us from other schools is not so much anything necessarily new. It's classical, Catholic, traditional education.
How important is it having this resource available to the community that St. Anthony's resides in? What does it mean to the Hispanic community there, particularly, who constitute a vast number of your student body?
Almost 100%. Out of the nearly 1,700 students, maybe about 30 kids are not of Hispanic origin. What's so important to the community is that these predominantly immigrant families, first-generation families, and primarily from Mexico. And these families, they really don't have access, this kind of access to private education or Catholic schools. Normally in Mexico, you have to be wealthy in order to go to a Catholic school. So they come here, they see this opportunity, they see what they didn't get to have. They know, even if their education is limited, they understand what a good education is. They know the tradition of the church education system, and they really make a point to come to the school.
What is the faith component here? What do you offer them in terms of the sacraments and religious formation?
It's huge. I mean, they get the sacraments every week. They get confession, they get communion. Obviously, being able to be in front of the Eucharist at least once a week is a big deal to me. They first communion, confirmation classes. I mean, we just recently had like 90-some kids get confirmed, and almost all of them are from our high school.
Now, you know what your critics say. Your critics say, okay, that's very nice that you like to have the sacraments available, but why take public funds and route them to what is predominantly and basically a religious institution?
It's the parent's right to be the primary educator. That's what the Catholic faith has always taught, and we believe that to this day. I think it's an American right for a parent to choose where they want their child to go to. It's not to have one system run by state schools would be tyranny. And the fact that we have a program in Milwaukee that allows parents to choose, it's their choice. I mean, what else can you say?
There was a report I came across, this is from the Sentinel Journal, and it talks about enrollment in private schools in Wisconsin dipping by 17% since 2000. But in the areas where the voucher program is existent. 9% increase during that period. Some say this is welfare for the Catholic schools. Your response?
Well, I just think it's clear that when you take out the financial component, people know where they want to send their kids.
Now, there are those who are critical of school choice and say there's no accountability. You don't have the same accountability that a public school has.
Well, I couldn't be more in disagreement. We actually have a situation with the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program where kids or parents can take their voucher wherever they want to go. So if there's no accountability, why do the parents keep coming? Why has St. Anthony grown 100 to 125 kids every year for the past 10 years if there's no accountability? They know exactly the product that they're getting. If they're not getting it correctly, they can take it somewhere else, and they could, but they don't.
There was a report I read in the Journal Sentinel, and they claim the voucher schools are no more successful. In fact, they may be less successful than the public schools. When the testing breaks out, they say that they're not demonstratively better in math or reading.
Well, I can't speak for all the schools, but I can speak for St. Anthony's. Again, the fact that we have grown, we've accepted everybody. We have no waiting list. We could have, but that's why we grew to 5 buildings. Every parent who wanted to bring their kids to St. Anthony, we found a way to put them into our classrooms. We don't have oversized classrooms. We average like 25 kids per class. When you have that many kids coming into each class or each grade level across all grades every year, it does hurt your test scores a little bit, but these are English as a second language learners.
Many of these kids come to your school, they don't speak English.
No, they don't.
And how quickly are they tested once they hit the school? I mean, is there a 1-year waiting period, a grace period?
No, actually with the private schools that participate in the choice program, they have to be tested immediately. So this is the first 3 weeks of school. So in other words, last year we had 8 children, grades 4 through 8, who spoke no English, yet their test scores are going to be on our report. Versus in the public sector, both for the public schools and the public charter schools, they get what's called a full academic year, where they get a whole year to have a child before their test scores are put on their record.
Let's talk for a moment about the diversion of funds. The teachers' unions and others say you're diverting funds that could be going to public schools in the local communities, to private institutions, and therefore you are all but ensuring that those public institutions will continue to crumble.
Well, first of all, they get 2 to 3 times more money than we do. The right of public education is not towards an institution, it's towards the education. And we're providing that education just as well, if not better than they are.
What is the breakdown? What is the comparison? Isn't it something like $13,000 a child in the public school system?
Depends on if they're getting title funds for interventions and whatnot, and if they're special needs. I mean, sometimes they can get anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 per kid, while we're getting the same $64.42 per child.
What does that mean? $6,042?
Yes, $6,000. That's how we say it, yeah.
Now, tell me about the standardized tests, because as I said earlier, these standardized tests, despite the wishes and hopes of many who are supporting vouchers, they haven't shown to be demonstratively different from their public school counterparts.
Well, again, like I said, one of the things that is really important that the studies have shown is that we have more graduation rate, a much higher, 18 to 20% higher graduation rate, and many of the kids that go to the private schools in the voucher program end up going and finishing college, not just starting, but finishing college. So in the end, you know, besides having a safe place to go to school, a culture that's teaching morals and values and teaching them how the whole person, they end up actually doing better in the college years.
Tell me how this works with what the interaction is between your school, a private school receiving vouchers, and the public school. Has it increased competition, innovation? Is that something you've seen on the local level?
Yes, actually it has. Matter of fact, the Milwaukee public school system graduation rates has also grown and increased over the years ever since the voucher program has been there. And matter of fact, it's my understanding that everywhere there has been a competitive voucher tax credit type system around the country, that the local public schools do end up doing better.
Now, of the voucher programs throughout the United States, and I see numbers everywhere from 12 to 16 across the United States, 4 and D.C. offer vouchers to low-income students. Only 4 of those programs and D.C. All the rest, the vouchers are primarily for those in the disabled community or special cases.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So why has this basically been restricted to Wisconsin, Michigan, Louisiana, Florida, very few number of states. Why hasn't it taken off nationally if it's such a demonstrable good?
Well, unfortunately, there's something called the Blaine Amendment in many state constitutions. And basically what that says is that no private or no public funds can go to a private religious institution for education. Now, it's my understanding, I could be wrong, but when I read about the Blaine Amendment, I'm pretty sure that it was actually a reaction to the growing Catholic school education system here in America. And so that's when they originally said, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. And since then, now we're trying to get rid of it. In many states, they've pretty much got around it by doing tax credits and other ways that the parents can basically get it off their tax bill instead of, so it goes indirectly and it's not going directly.
So the parents make the choice.
Not a direct voucher, but an indirect tax credit.
Do you think that's what will probably happen in Louisiana, where Bobby Jindal's voucher program called a scholarship plan, where that was struck down by the Supreme Court, not the whole plan, just the funding mechanism?
Right. No, I actually don't think that they're going to do a tax credit. I think they're going to just change the funding mechanism on how we do it in Wisconsin, where the parent gets the voucher and they pretty much sign it over to the school. So there's no separation clause problem because the parent is giving the money. Now just like what you do with the GI Bill, those can all go to private Catholic schools as well. It's the same concept.
Okay, I put aside, and we've gotten through so many of the public policy objections to this. Here's the real question I have for you, and I've seen this certainly over the years interviewing people on this set. What has been the impact on the families, on your students, and what are their parents saying about being in a private Catholic parochial setting as opposed to the local public school where they were for a number of years?
It's huge. I mean, our parents, again, coming mostly from Mexico, they have a very strong Catholic faith, but the formation wasn't as great as it could have been, because you know how the history of Mexico has a very rocky road with the church and the government and what they're allowed to do and what they're allowed to preach. Coming here, it's in their hearts. They want their child to have a better education, and they want them to have a better Catholic formation. And so what it really means to the families is that we can also use the children, and they're actually reaching out and re-evangelizing their parents, getting them better formed in their own faith. And it's a huge difference in our community.
Tell me, as you look at this experience across the country, as you talk to leaders in the Catholic Church, why hasn't the Church fully engaged on this issue of vouchers? I know every now and then you'll see Archbishop Laurie or a Cardinal Wuerl, but nationally, you don't see the sort of open-throated support that one sees for other issues like immigration or marriage or abortion.
I think there's a couple reasons. I think the biggest one is that they just don't know any better. I mean, this is still only in about 16 states and to a limited view. I mean, even in Wisconsin, this was only relegated to the city of Milwaukee and now to the city of Racine. So the vast majority of Wisconsin really, I mean, they just hear about it. It doesn't really affect them. So I think once people would realize how effectual this is, especially when you're reaching out to the underserved and low-income families, I think they could see the benefit of that. The other reason is I think they fear government interference. Some of the people that I've talked to on the outside, they say, well, if you take government funding, you know, basically they say, you know, let the camel's nose in, the behind is sure to follow into the tent.
Yeah, they'll be reading your emails before long, Bishop.
And that's what they're worried about. But, you know, and yes, there's a lot of regulation that we have to go through to be part of this program. But the thing that excites me the most about is like I told you earlier, they get to be in front of the sacraments. They get to be in front of our Lord. And for me, that's worth going through all the hoops.
You can learn more about the St. Anthony School and Zeus Rodriguez's work in Milwaukee by visiting StAnthonyMilwaukee.org. That's StAnthonyMilwaukee.org. Well, that is all the time we have. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Go to RaymondArroyo.com. The Twitter and Facebook pages are linked on the left-hand side of the site. And be sure to sign up for my weekly e-blasts on the website as well. They're free. I shot out a great lineup of stories, commentary, and inspiration to many of you earlier in the week. And don't miss our show next week, particularly you suspense addicts. My exclusive interview with best-selling novelist Mary Higgins Clark premieres next week. What a great lady. Still churning out bestsellers at 85 years old. Find out the secret to her success. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. We'll see you next time. Bye now.